too painfully aware of this.
I want to send my warm wishes to the great people of Tennessee in the wake of the horrible, very vicious tornado that killed at least 19 people and injured many more.
President Trump will travel to Tennessee on Friday following storms early this morning that killed 25 people and left behind a path of devastation.
National Weather Service teams spent today in central Tennessee surveying the damage. Teams surveyed the Nashville area as well as Davidson and Wilson counties.
Crews surveying Mount Juliet and Donaldson found at least EF3 damage in that area. Teams will continue surveying other impacted areas throughout the week. Schools, courts, transit lines, and the state capitol were all closed today as homes were left behind as rubble, power lines snapped, and huge trees broken. The storm struck early this morning as families slept. Many were hit before they could even get out of bed to find safety.
The rooftop is missing on part of the building. We went into our room to grab some shoes, and we don't have a door on our building. There's no windows. It's really bad.
If you're wondering what you can do to help those affected, we have information online at WPSDLocal6.com.
And Jennifer, while no tornadoes appear to have touched down in West Kentucky, many of you got plenty of hail. Here are some of the photos that you sent us. So, how are things the day after the storm? Local 6's Chris Yu, live for us in Ballard County tonight. Chris, what do you see?
Tanja, we saw some piles of hail remaining in front of some of these homes in Kevel, but driving through Kevel and through the center today, we did not see any major damage, which is quite surprising given how much hail fell last night. Now, this is video that Joe Hamilton recorded of his back porch in Kevel last night. The pellets were as big as coins, and you can see just how fast they were coming down. Fortunately, he tells me his home did not suffer damage. Now, as for his vehicles, only the visors attached above the side windows are cracked. Melody White, the manager of Hometown Insurance in Kevel, says she's received about 10 calls from people asking what they should do if they have roof damage, and only 2 people reported vehicle damage. Surprising, given how much hail fell.
It got harder and harder, and I thought, well, it's not going to get really bad. It's going to let up in a few minutes, but it didn't. It continued for about 15 minutes, and then it got to quarter size pretty quick, and it was pretty scary.
White says during a hailstorm in 2003, between 150 to 200 people contacted her to file claims. Fortunately, this time around, at least for now, it does not appear that as many people suffered damage. Live in Kevel, Chris Yu, WPSD Local 6.
All right, Chris, thanks. To see the many photos and videos you sent us of last night's hailstorm, go to WPSDLocal6.com.
All right, meteorologist Noah Bergen in now. You spent a lot of time tracking these storms last night. Do we know if the storms that hit Nashville were part of the same storms that hit the local 6 area?
Yes, they actually were. The supercell that spawned that EF3 tornado, you see it here circled, it actually formed in Dyersburg in Trenton, Tennessee. It was severe warning just south of Martin. This was 9 o'clock last night. It traveled actually hundreds of miles across the state of Tennessee last evening. Here's a loop of the radar. You see it circled there. Jason, Lindsay, and I were covering that right during the 10 o'clock news. It was severe warned in Paris, Tennessee. We were concerned about it having a tornado in our area, but it did not. Here it is at midnight. Classic 6 signature we talked about all last night with a hook echo on there. Strong, violent rotation blew through the northern part of Nashville. Continued east, paralleling I-40 towards Cookeville. And if you can believe it, that supercell, there's the track of it, 250 miles long, which originated in the Missouri Boot Hill in our area and ended just east of Cookeville and Tennessee. We'll talk more about this storm coming up in a few minutes, but for our forecast tonight, talk about a nice day of weather. How about that warmth again? 64 in Paducah, 62 Princeton, excuse me. I know we talked last night about how there was a cold front coming through, and you typically would think when we say there's a cold front that it's going to get colder. Well, that front just really gave us the sunshine today. Not really much in terms of a drop in temperature as we enjoyed those warm conditions again. Winds are somewhat breezy out of the west, 5 to 15 miles per hour. Here's your forecast for the night tonight. There will be a few more clouds that move in, especially around and just after midnight. Temperatures fall near 40 again. Winds light 5 to 10 miles per hour. We have 1 or 2 chances for showers the next few days. We'll talk more about that tornado in Nashville and also the weekend forecast coming up a little bit later.
I've always said, or not always, but recently whenever the weather started becoming as abnormal as it has for the past noticeably for the past 10, 12, 15 years, that we should be just as concerned right now with it being this warm, almost 70 degrees today, even though a cold front come through, 60 something degrees. We should be just as concerned with the weather patterns being like they are right now as we would be if a tornado was sitting on top of us or a hurricane. But instead, we are so calloused to this type of atmosphere, people really don't think a whole lot about it. Especially Donald Trump. We have not yet even broke the tip of the iceberg towards seeing what is going to occur this year pertaining to a radical weather pattern, weather-related incidences. It's going to be a rough, rocky road. The same, but more intense. And until people wake up pertaining to making adjustments in their lives, regardless whether it be in the form of evolving away from all this, taking all this crude oil out of the ground and burning all these gas guzzlers and not evolving to other means of electric power, and until people are willing to give up their sinful lifestyles that they're involved in, we're going to continue to see more and more and more. And I'm just wondering where the breaking point's going to be with the Americans before they finally say enough is enough.
Decision 2020 coverage today. Cracken County Public Library. Happening now. United Way and Pizza Inn teamed up once again to raise dough for the community during the annual Dough Raiser fundraiser. And you have until 8 tonight to participate. Tips and 10% of every ticket goes right to the United Way. And Bidwell, the United Way of Paducah, Cracken County's community impact manager, says the event is about more than making money.
The number one reason we do this is relationship. We get to meet new people. We get to see some of our great partners and donors out, and it's
fun. Orchid and Aloha semi-in-ground pool.
Well, ahead here on Evening Edition, Super Tuesday contests were held today.
Spell over me.
better.
Lightning can change your plans in a
Ultimate retirement, you can.
First, how one local church is helping kids not feel so scared during storms.
That's next at 5. We'll be right back.
At 5 with Mark Kiesling, Victoria Idoni, and Chief Meat.
Is at a polling location in Austin, the seat of Travis County, which split evenly between Sanders and Clinton back in 2016, and
with more than 2,500 cases reported. And 2 countries in South America, you see them there, Chile and Argentina, have now confirmed their first cases of the virus. And now to the Tokyo Olympics. They are just 4 months away, but the deadly coronavirus is throwing the games into question. Japan's minister for the Tokyo Olympics says it could all be postponed until later this year. CNN's Will Ripley has more.
The fact that they're even having this conversation here in Tokyo about the possibility of postponing the Summer Olympics has to be devastating for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic organizers, but also the Japanese people themselves. Remember, this was supposed to be Japan's comeback after the devastation of 2011, the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown at Fukushima. This was Japan's reintroduction to the world. This was sold to the Japanese people as an opportunity to bring in tourists from all over, athletes from all over, and showcase just how far Japan has come. And yet now, with this coronavirus outbreak and still a lot of questions about whether Japan is equipped to handle things based on what happened on the Diamond Princess cruise ship. There were just 3,700 people. Imagine hundreds of thousands of people from 200 plus countries coming here to Tokyo, staying in close quarters, and what that could potentially mean if this outbreak isn't under control when they leave Japan and go back to their home countries. It could be an absolutely devastating public health crisis. And yet, obviously, Japan, which has invested tens of billions of dollars in hosting these games, they want this to go forward. So they've been looking at their contract, and according to the Tokyo 2020 organizers, as long as they hold the games this year at some point, even if they have to push them back from the late July start time, at least they say the games could be held in Tokyo. But of course, the world, the International Olympic Committee, all have to feel safe that this is actually a place where people can go and safely compete and then go home without getting sick or bringing that illness back to their communities. Will Ripley, CNN, Tokyo.
Okay, now given all the concerns over the coronavirus, here's what many of you want to know. How do you protect yourself against this virus? The World Health Organization says first, wash your hands frequently, of course, with soap and water, and this is the key for at least 20 seconds. This is really the best way to prevent the spread of the infection. In between hand washing, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Next, if you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a tissue or do it into your elbow. Avoid close contact with anyone who has flu-like symptoms. And of course, practice food safety. Thoroughly cook meat and eggs. Use different cutting boards and knives for raw meat, and wash your hands. Again, most important, after handling it. Monday's record rally, meantime, on Wall Street did not carry over into Tuesday. U.S. stocks took a dive, and get this, the 10-year Treasury bond yield dropped below 1% for the very first time in history. The Dow did close lower, 786 points, just one day after its best point gain in history as coronavirus fears surged on Wall Street. Now, the S&P 500 also finished down as well. You see it there, the NASDAQ Composite, both down almost 3%. Now, a few hours earlier, the U.S. Federal Reserve made an emergency interest rate cut because of those coronavirus fears. The new benchmark interest rate is now between 1 and 1/4%. 90% of the votes have now been counted in Israel, and the horse trading, yep, it's already started. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is claiming victory after projections showed his right-wing bloc will win the most seats in parliament. But it's expected to fall short of the crucial 2 seats, the 60 seats that he needs, and he is still 2 seats short of that. So Mr. Netanyahu is trying to lure other politicians to his coalition. Turkey, meantime, is confirming its military has shot down a 3rd Syrian warplane. The plane was down by a missile over Idlib province, where Syria's military is trying to take back the last rebel-held areas. Turkey shot down 2 Syrian warplanes in the same area Sunday. Last week, a Syrian airstrike in Idlib killed dozens of Turkish soldiers. And we return right now to CNN's Super Tuesday election coverage.
Coverage, Dana Chelian's getting some more exit poll information. This time,
every room at Mount Zion has an emergency go back, and that way when something does happen, everything they need is right here. The staff made sure the kids didn't know they were in danger, even though Rushing saw what was happening outside.
We came through a door thinking that we were gonna not make it, because out in the hallway, that's how it felt.
Her fear went away when she saw these faces. After the storm passed, Rushing says then they explained to the kids what happened and that they were safe now.
They did what they were supposed to do that day. You know, my teachers did what they were supposed to do that day, and everything just worked perfect because of the planning.
Mount Zion is back to normal. It's been about a year since that tornado hit, and Rushing tells me the kids do remember the tornado, but not with fear in their memories. She says that is a good thing. Live in McCracken County, Leah Shields, WPSD, Local 6.
All right, Leah, thank you. The preschool will be doing their tornado drill later this week. Rushing says they also update their emergency plan every year. Well, our area is no stranger to natural disasters. Meteorologists say the best way to prepare is to have a safety plan in place.
yeah, so here are the things you need to do before, during, and after a tornado hits. Local 6's Timmy Adelaide joins us. So, Timmy, what's the best way to prepare?
Todd, the best way to prepare is by staying alert. This is the tornado safety checklist from the American Red Cross. It's important to listen to your local news and make sure you have a weather radio. You need to know your community's warning system, pick a safe room, and practice safety drills from time to time. I spoke with Bradley Pickett. He lives outside of Kevel, and he says yesterday's storm sent him and his wife to their basement.
When you think of hail, you think of a tornado, and that's the worst thing that you think about when you think of seeing the hail. and typically we don't have hail this time of year. And so you prepare for the worst when you start preparing for this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
The American Red Cross says if there is a tornado threat,
like he said, you ordinarily don't have hail this time of year. This isn't the typical hail type season. Matter of fact, we're still in the latter part of the winter. We haven't even had our time changed yet. It changes this weekend. We lose an hour this weekend. It moves forward. But it should speak volumes to people in alerting them and telling them that global warming, environmental changes are real and they're happening. And now what can we do to prevent it from getting even more worse?
place to be is an underground shelter, basement, or safe room.
Yeah, always plan ahead. All right, Tammy, thank you. Another way to prepare for a tornado, of course, is by having an emergency kit. Tonight at 6, we'll explain what you need to have inside those kits.
WPSD Local 6, the Weather Authority, certified most accurate by WeatherRate.
Well, this time last night, this is what we were seeing, just about exactly 24 hours ago. I'm showing this again because if you didn't see it, this has to be the story of the evening across West Kentucky. Thankfully, we did not have anywhere near the amount of devastating weather or tornadoes that Nashville and Middle Tennessee had. But look at this. If you didn't see the hail in the sky's windshield, you'd probably think that this was snow covering I-24 and Paducah going by exit 7. Pictures and scenes that will last for a lifetime for those of you in Ballard County. We've talked to many people. I'm still trying to churn through all of the photos and reports. We've got many people in Ballard County who have said, I talked to one man who said he's lived there 40 years and has never seen hail like they saw there last night. Certainly very unusual weather we had. Thankfully the radar is quiet for tonight. Here's all the storm reports from last night. All these little dots indicate a severe hail report, wind damage, or tornadoes. Now, we do have what's probably going to be an official tornado confirmed in southeast Missouri. This was caught via a picture in Malden, Missouri, where about 10:15 last night, Jason and I were on during the news tracking this one heading towards New Madrid. This will probably be confirmed as an EF0 or an EF1. The National Weather Service will be doing a storm survey on that one in the coming days. Now, new this afternoon, we found out the new marina at the top of the lake was moved 20 feet and also damaged. That was in Catawba just before 7 o'clock. And about 30 to 40 minutes ago, the Weather Service in Paducah officially confirmed an EF1 with 90-mile-per-hour winds touched down just to the east of Princeton. We were tracking that storm in Princeton last night for about 45 minutes to a solid hour. The tornado came down just past Princeton, moved across the county border into Christian County, right near Crofton. Some pretty good damage was reported with that a little after 8 o'clock. Now, in terms of Nashville, there is still a lot of surveying going on. The damage spans over 75 miles, and it still remains unclear as to whether all of the damage was caused by one tornado or if there was multiple ones or just the same tornado went down, lifted up, went down, and lifted up. But for now, so far, the Weather Service has said that the strongest was an EF3 in Donaldson with potentially 165-plus mile-per-hour winds, and that could go up tomorrow as they do more surveys. 45,000 people without power, and unfortunately some flash flooding. You know, locally, this is the time of year where things are really going to start to ramp up. In March, historically, we average about 57 tornadoes in our forecast area. Check out April, 134 to 144 by May. So things are going to start to get pretty active around here, and we're no stranger, unfortunately, to those overnight tornadoes, as we just had the 8-year anniversary from the deadly EF4 in Harrisburg, Illinois, 8 years ago. But for tonight, thankfully, it's quiet. A few more clouds will move in after midnight, temps near 40. Tomorrow morning to start your Wednesday, sunshine in the morning, might turn overcast or mostly cloudy during the late morning into the early afternoon, temps in the 50s.
Reporting and thought.
Riding in this kind of facility into Williamson County Airport. Now that
this week I encountered the same
And a panel of award-winning journalists.
Let's not get sucked in. We have things.
We have another day even behind that one where we'll be back in the 60s. More sunshine expected in many areas on Thursday. Then a little system will push through and it'll bring us some cooler temperatures. Some of us will only see highs in the 40s.
Officer's not going to like this.
Jersey Shore family vacation. All new this Jersey.
Millions being spent on campaign ads. Much more of our special. That's outrageous. There's nothing like. There's not even close. We're a much better planet than that.
and much better prepared. But that's the kind of stuff that is causing this kind of fear, and I think it's very dangerous.
What was the statistics of that again?
50 million people. That's outrageous.
Wow. Those numbers has really went up.
There's nothing like, there's not even close. We're a much better planet than that. And much better prepared. But that's the kind of stuff that is causing this kind of fear, and I think it's very dangerous.
I hear, you know...
This is what they're using for a explanation of causing the fear. If the truth be known, the mass majority of it's based around greed. You can use this for an excuse all you want, but just because you're using it for an excuse don't make it necessarily all 100% correct. They can be using it for an excuse to create the panic, but in reality, the real reason why they're doing it is because of greed.
China, by the way, China says now it may have turned the corner. It may not be far from victory. Foxconn says China factories operating at now 50%. So I don't know, maybe China's coming out of it. We're just tracking all of the headlines, all the news as best we can. Your reaction to the CDC and the U.S. government maybe saying to the U.S. airlines, look, you got to tell us what passengers came in from overseas. We need their emails, we need their phone numbers so we can track them and see who else in the communities may be exposed to them. The airlines are pushing back on that. Potential $30 billion loss to the airline industry worldwide on this. Would you be for that, Colonel?
We got to be very careful with this step. The U.S. First of all, that's a step we should have been considering 5 weeks ago. In the middle of this, now we're pushing back, want the airlines to provide information on us personally. When we did this after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, and this type of activity we've got to be very, very cautious with. The airlines and the passengers can cooperate with the U.S. government. I think the U.S., all the governments, WHO and the U.S., have got to get their act together a lot quicker than to start asking for personal information. I just think that's a caution flag.
Yeah, yes, I hear what you're saying. It's just the rapidity of it, the speed of it, and people who are as young as in their 30s in China getting sick and dying from it. You're right. More information. We got to get a handle on this. The government responses around the world are key. Colonel, come back soon. We love having you on, and thanks for your service to our country.
You're welcome.
Next up, we're taking on this big fight. It's the FBI FISA fight. It's not over. It's just beginning. The president met with senior Republican senators, congressmen, and Attorney General William Barr. Can they get it done? Can they hammer out reforms to stop future politicians from abusing surveillance powers to spy on rival political campaigns? The president says he's still outraged over what happened to his 2016 campaign. The story next.
With SoFi, get your credit card.
Makes you wonder, don't it? Really makes you wonder.
Cards right by Consolidate.
Coronavirus, what to do, what to avoid, and when to see a doctor. CNN's new podcast has answers. Join Dr. Sanjay Gupta for Coronavirus, Fact versus Fiction. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
David Shelley is getting some more fascinating information on the exit poll information. I understand that, David, you got some new details about how voters feel about all the money that's being spent.
That's right, Wolf. In a few of the states today, we asked voters, do you think it's fair or unfair for a candidate to spend unlimited amounts of their own money? I guess you could call it the Michael Bloomberg question, obviously. Take a look in Texas. 50% of the electorate says it's fair, spend unlimited amounts of your money, but 47%, roughly split half and half, says it's unfair. Similar story in Tennessee. All these states, Michael Bloomberg advertised a lot in. 46% call it fair in Tennessee, 49% call it unfair. And in North Carolina, look at this, a majority, 53%, say it is unfair for somebody to spend unlimited amounts of their own money. 44% call it fair. Anderson, over to you.
David Jolly, thanks very much. What the interesting is that essentially about Michael Bloomberg, Michael Sperkanish, is that, I mean, he's saying he's going to give all his...
And I agree that it's unfair, and I'm going to tell you why. Whenever you go to a race car track pertaining to different categories, they don't put somebody in race that's got a four-banger driving a Pinto against somebody that's got over 600 horses that's got a modified deal. They put everybody into a certain category that makes it fair for the category. You can look at the same thing with tractor pulls. You can look at the same thing with other types of, let's say, boxing. They're not going to put somebody in the ring that weighs 210 pounds against somebody that only weighs 140 pounds. Because it's unfair. And that's exactly how people need to look at the election whenever it comes to somebody being able to pump more material out to the general public to bring awareness of their cause in their campaign versus somebody that don't have that kind of money. It's very unfair. It ought to be a certain amount of money that's delegated to each independent candidate based upon each state. All right, we're allowed to pump $20 million in this state based upon the size of the state and based upon how many people live there, versus another state, let's say Texas or California or even Florida, that we can delegate, let's say, $40 million for advertisement. And I'm just throwing these numbers out there because I really don't know what would be considered of being equivalent or adequate in what I'm talking about. But I think people get the message in what I'm trying to say is that it wouldn't be fair to put Muhammad Ali in there with a featherweight, or George Foreman, or some of those other big, heavy, hard-hitting men that whenever they hit you, you better have something to back it. If not, they're going to knock you into la-la land. Pertaining to their age, pertaining to their height and their weight. So whenever you're talking about somebody being able to pump billions of dollars more into a campaign per state towards intriguing the people, intriguing the voters, yes, it is unfair. It's very unfair. I think that's probably one of the most unfairest parts about the election. The I got my words tangled up right now. Pertaining to the democracy, the free, fair democracy, is that's one of the black eyes that it has towards it being unfair, because you shouldn't be allowed to pump out no more information to one group of society than you do another group pertaining to your ideals, and those that want to listen to whatever that you're promoting, they can listen, and if they don't want to listen, then they don't listen. If they want to listen to one candidate, they listen to that candidate, and if they don't want to listen to that candidate, they don't listen to that candidate. So to answer the question, yes, it's very unfair whenever somebody has that kind of money that can override and overpower everybody else towards pumping that type of information out there to the general public. They basically own the media. If you own that, if you have that kind of money, you can basically buy the media. If you buy the media, you can buy the power to persuade the American people. I hope that makes some sense to somebody.
To whoever the nominee is, that's less impactful.
Endorsing him too. What we've learned about President Obama tonight is several of his former advisors endorse Biden as well. And Bernie Sanders tonight going.
Voters go to the polls in 14 states and 1 U.S. territory. The political drama taking place.
Elizabeth Warren facing a crucial test as the first exit polls come in right now, and we'll show you. The deadly plane crash on an American highway, several dead. The sniper scare here in New York City. And the wildfire threatening several homes tonight. Families ordered to evacuate.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a very busy Tuesday night. The Super Tuesday Showdown, the exit polls coming in right now. The coronavirus concern widening. News on that case in New York City. But we're going to begin tonight with a state of emergency after those deadly tornadoes in the south. At least 25 people killed in Tennessee, a massive tornado hitting while families were sleeping. In Nashville, a possible EF3 winds up to 165 miles an hour. Sunrise revealing the staggering damage there. Homes and buildings destroyed, tractor trailers overturned. Some families tonight have lost everything. Thousands now facing a very long road back. And tonight, the new threat moving into several states this evening. ABC's Victor Kendo leads us off from East Nashville tonight. Victor?
David, here in East Nashville, the destruction is everywhere. Power poles snapped. Some houses have collapsed. It's clear that this neighborhood took the brunt of a tornado, and making things even more terrifying, it all happened in the middle of the night. Tonight, the death toll is rising after powerful tornadoes wreaked destruction in and around Nashville.
They were saying how devastating that it is towards it hitting at night, in which it is. It becomes that much more dangerous. But at the same token, there is also a silver lining to the tornadoes hitting at night. Your airports is not going to be full. Your schools and your colleges, your universities aren't going to be full. And there's not going to be as much activity going on in some certain areas where the tornado actually hit versus just hitting homes. So there is a downside and an upside, depending upon where the tornado actually hits, of whether or not it was worse for that particular group of people in that particular area for the tornado to hit at night, or if it would have been worse if it would have hit during the day. Either or, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible to see this type of devastation happening to anybody's neighborhood.
Sirens sounding in the middle of the night, power flashes illuminating the dark sky.
If you have friends, please, family members, call them, wake them up.
We heard the sirens going off, we heard the wind, we went in the basement. 20 seconds later, it was done.
Tractor trailers flipped on their sides. A fire chief rescuing this 7-year-old boy from outside his home. He was trapped by live wires. More than 150 hurt.
Our heart breaks for those whose lives were changed in an instant last night.
Dozens of homes and businesses flattened. Geysers of water from broken pipes. Cars tossed on top of each other. Hangars and airplanes splintered at the John Tune Airport. Early estimates from the National Weather Service indicate this damage is from an EF3 tornado with winds up to 165 miles per hour. This is all that's left of this church. Amid the wreckage, incredible tales of survival.
We pulled the door shut.
Anna Kate Ross and her family sheltering in this closet, telling me when the storm passed.
The windows had been blown out, the doors had been blown open, and our neighbor had been ejected from his back house apartment back there into our yard, and he was in here trying to look for life. But he survived. He survived. He's doing great.
Tennessee election officials forced to close some Super Tuesday polling places in some of the hardest hit areas and delay openings for others. Tens of thousands of homes and businesses without power.
It is just staggering to see. Let's get back to Victor tonight, and I know officials are still searching for the missing tonight.
That's right, David. The governor just announced there is an unknown number of people still unaccounted for, making search and rescue efforts so difficult. Gas lines are broken, some water mains are damaged, and cell phone service is definitely spotty. Tennessee is voting in Super Tuesday primaries, and officials have announced that some sites will remain open until 10 o'clock. David?
All right, Victor Akendo leading us off tonight. Victor, thank you. And to make matters worse, there's now a new threat as we head into the evening hours. Meteorologist Rob Marciano tonight with the latest track. Hey, Rob.
Bushman is getting nervous. Of trains, buses, and stations. The massive cleaning effort following the state's first suspected case of community spread of the virus. A man in his 50s from Westchester County now hospitalized in serious condition.
We're very concerned because of what appears to be previous respiratory condition, which creates more danger.
The man commuted by train to Grand Central Station, saying he also traveled recently to Israel and Miami. His family now under quarantine, and 2 schools closed connected to his son. It's New York's second case of COVID-19 after a healthcare worker tested positive following a trip to Iran. The number's growing. More than 110 cases across the U.S., at least 15 states affected. In Washington state, the death toll jumping to 9, where the elderly have been hit hardest at this nursing center. Our Kaylee Hartung is there.
For a second night in a row here at Life Care, we've seen emergency vehicles speed in, and now another person taken to the hospital.
Tonight, word of 7 more cases in the state, including 2 men in their 20s. That virus on the move. A new case in North Carolina traced back to that nursing home in Washington. Today, more than 120 evacuees from the Diamond Princess cruise ship released from quarantine at Lackland Air Force Base and bused to the airport.
Where are you heading to?
But only those who have been symptom-free for a full 14 days after local officials blasted the CDC for releasing a woman who later tested positive for COVID-19. Tonight, hundreds of American college students are making their way home from study abroad programs after last night's announcement.
There will be 100% screening, all direct flights at all airports across Italy and across South Korea.
But Chloe Froning, on her way home from Italy, had to connect through Amsterdam. She tells us she wasn't screened at all.
As of right now, we have not experienced any sort of extra check based on anything regarding the coronavirus.
Not even a temperature check before boarding her flight to Atlanta.
The guy asked me if I had been to Iran or China in the last 2 weeks. Interestingly, not Italy.
And so let's get to Whit Johnson tonight. He's now outside the hospital in New York where this patient is being treated. As you reported there, Whit, he's in serious condition. You also reported his family is in self-quarantine, his children as well, but this is actually widening tonight.
David, health officials are ordering anyone who recently came in contact with that patient to self-quarantine, and that includes members of his congregation at his synagogue through at least the end of the week. David?
All right, Whit Johnson tonight. Whit, thank you. We know so many of you at home have many questions about all this, particularly given the conflicting messages on a possible treatment in the works now for people who have coronavirus and work on a vaccine for those who haven't gotten it. 2 very different timelines here. The director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Anthony Fauci, tried to clear this up on Capitol Hill today, so we wanted to cut through it all for you at home. So let's bring in our chief medical editor, Dr. Jen Ashton, with us here again tonight. We heard Dr. Fauci talk about a possible therapy, a possible treatment, several of them, in fact, being tested right now. He actually named one by name. What's the status of this all?
There's some excitement about that, David. It's an old drug that didn't work against Ebola, but shown some promise against other coronaviruses. It is in clinical trials now. We should expect some results in a few weeks, and this would be for people with moderate or severe novel coronavirus.
Now, on the vaccine, because we've heard varying messages, the president has talked about a vaccine often in the last couple of days. Dr. Fauci clarifying in the room with the president. Dr. Fauci went back at this again today, and what's he saying about the testing of the vaccine? That's a very different timeline.
Here in this country, about to start phase 1 clinical trials, but David, still about 12 to 18 months away from that vaccine being available to the public.
You know, Dr. Fauci said something else that echoed what we've been reporting here for several nights on World News, and that is that 80% figure. He said data again today out of China shows that about 80% of these cases showed mild symptoms.
That's right. That's an important number, David. 80% showing mild symptoms. And again, those people spontaneously recover. But it is important to remind people, take these simple steps to reduce risk. Wash your hands, cover your nose and mouth, don't touch your face, and if you are sick, stay home.
Quick last question for you, Jen, because I was thinking about this today. Our phones, we carry them all day long. We put them up to our faces.
Very dirty, wipe them down as often as possible.
As often as possible, right? Dr. Ashton with us. Jen, thank you. And after a week of massive losses in the financial markets, the Federal Reserve taking emergency action. Chairman Jerome Powell announcing its biggest surprise rate cut since the 2008 financial crisis, slashing its benchmark interest rate a 0.5 percentage point. But the move appeared, at least at first, to have backfired, heightening investor fears about the economic picture ahead. The Dow actually falling another 785 points today, nearly 3% after that up day yesterday. Now to the race for 2020 tonight. Super Tuesday underway, voting in 14 states and America. And the biggest primary day, about a third of all delegates at stake tonight. Joe Biden with new momentum. Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke, all endorsing him overnight. Bernie Sanders.
Local officials here in the Seattle area say they're working to buy a local hotel to house the sick, a clear indication they expect those numbers to also rise. Lester.
Yeah. All right, Miguel Almaguer, thank you. We'll be right back with more breaking news on the coronavirus, including today's big move on the economy and the run on supplies.
Good grief.
Arresto. Explain why. In the Democratic primary, states award delegates the candidates based.
Good grief.
16 states now report the presence of the virus, which originated in China just a few months ago but has quickly spread around the globe. Nearly 91,000 worldwide have been infected so far, with more than 3,100 deaths. In Iran, this video appears to show dozens of bodies believed to be coronavirus victims scattered in a morgue in Tehran.
Wow.
And in Italy, the death toll has skyrocketed to 79.
Wow.
Back in Washington state, there's concern tonight the outbreak that began in this nursing home has spread to other states.
Health officials in North Carolina now reporting their first possible case. They're waiting for the results of one last test. They say the patient not only traveled here to Washington state, but Nora visited this very nursing home before getting sick.
So you have to ask yourself a question. What the heck is going on with the coronavirus? Now, seeing a tornado kill at least 25 people up into the Nashville, Tennessee region area. What the heck is going on? Well, if you'll go to the Bible and read it, it'll tell you. For all these are the beginnings of sorrows pertaining to the sin of man, or the sin of humanity. The sin of humanity has reached its boiling point that now Mother Nature is lashing out with tantrums, and of course the disease that has been massively spreading is just once more a clear indication of what Christ's Son, Jesus Christ, predicted that was going to occur in these last days. If there's ever been a time that people needed to get their hearts and their lives right with God, because you never know if you're going to catch a disease, if you're going to catch a bullet, or if you're going to catch a bad storm, or if you're going to go broke to the point that you can't afford to live adequately because the prices of the stuff is going up on a day-to-day level based around supply and demand. If there's ever been a time that people needed to turn to God, it's now. It's today. It's sad. We're living in sad, emotional times. Just like the Bible says that in the last days, Satan will rise up in great wrath because he knows his time is short. He knows that the clock is ticking, and it's not ticking in favor towards his survival, but it's ticking in favor towards his demise, towards his Achilles heel. Wow.
Jonathan. No warranty coverage.
Or sort of evenly among.
Lawmakers have almost finalized, set to spend about $7.5 billion on things like testing and vaccine development, production of emergency supplies, and helping states fight the virus. Vice President Pence on Capitol Hill with top experts, briefing senators about the administration response.
The biggest question, testing. When and where? They could not answer how soon people would be able to get the tests.
I was assured they're going to get out the door. The bottom line is it seems to be that the testing element is going to get more robust by the end of the week.
And late tonight, the vice president announced the CDC will issue new guidance making it clear any American can be tested for coronavirus subject to doctor's orders, and that all federal agencies will be directed to review their own internal travel policies. Lester.
All right, Hallie Jackson at the White House tonight. Thank you. And with cases of the coronavirus now popping up all across the country, we want to take a closer look at what's being done to prepare for the virus. Officials, as you keep hearing, urging caution over panic. Let's get more from Tom Costello.
On this Super Tuesday, it's not just politics on the minds of some voters.
We will have hand sanitizers. We will have wipes.
Crowds and the coronavirus, too.
We have lost a few people that were hired to be election clerks at our vote centers that were just a little bit nervous about being around the public.
New York crews out cleaning buses, trains, and stations after 2 confirmed cases there. The government says it shipped 75,000 test kits to labs across the country. Though skepticism tonight, those labs will be able to process nearly 1 million tests this week, as the FDA chief promised. As more labs test more samples, experts expect the number of confirmed coronavirus cases to rise nationwide. With airlines cutting back travel to Asia and parts of Europe, the U.S. Travel Association predicts a 6% drop in international travelers to the U.S. over the next 3 months. Both Facebook and Twitter pulling out of the South by Southwest conference in Austin. Meanwhile, health experts across the country are suggesting all of us cut back on handshakes, on casual hugs, and kisses. Hand sanitizers in churches now as priests urge parishioners to refrain from shaking hands or drinking from the same chalice.
We're not making monumental changes to things. It's just a few kind of tweaking it to be aware.
In Denver, someone stole protective masks meant for doctors, nurses, and patients at National Jewish Health. The hospital is now guarding its remaining supply and awaiting another delivery.
We've sequestered our masks that are around campus so that only staff have access to these masks.
With supplies running low, the World Health Organization says medical supply hoarding is now a problem as the virus and fear spread. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
And as we continue tonight, the coronavirus's surprising impact on children.